Thank you for coming to my talk. UE Audio sounds good. I'm Aaron McLaren, the director of the audio engine and the audio tech at Epic Games. I've been at Epic for about 9 years now, a little bit less than 9 years. And I've seen the investment in audio at Epic grow significantly through that time. I was the first audio programmer dedicated to audio that Epic had ever hired. And then from that point, we now have many audio programmers, lots of technical sound designers, and people really trying to push the boundary on what's possible in audio. And so this talk is essentially a summary of what happened in 2023, some cool features that rolled out for various products that we are working on, some preview of works in progress, like an early view on some really exciting stuff we're developing, and some first look at some really cool tech coming out that you'll be able to play and interact with very soon. So I'm gonna start with a sizzle reel that we're trying to do every year, put together sort of cool audio highlights from both our own projects, but also licensees, and also people in the community, students, people just posting and making cool stuff. We'll reach out and say, hey, would you like to be put in our sizzle reel? And so I'll start it by saying, if any of you are listening to this thinking like, I'm doing some cool audio stuff, just let us know. Hopefully we'll create a process that's a little bit more streamlined than just sort of randomly throwing stuff together. But you gotta start somewhere. So without further ado, this is our sizzle reel, and I'll start the talk off with that. So it's pretty fun to try to put that kind of thing together while also working on tons of games and projects and tech. Hopefully it was inspiring. One of the interesting things on that is the UE logo itself is actually, the tone in the beginning is the sound of the UE logo, and then the visual is driven by a 2D oscilloscope off the sound, which I thought was pretty cool. So before I go deep into the talk, this is sort of the thing that defines everything that we're doing at Epic for audio. These are sort of core principles of Epic, but I think it's worth going into these in the context of audio specifically. So when we build tech, we try to think about how that tech could be expanded and extended on by games themselves, by third parties, by tech purveyors. And we work closely with some of those to make sure that the APIs are extensible and work for them. And people in the community are often surprising us on the kinds of things that they're able to do with their tech. And that's not accidental, that's at core of what we do. We're also open, where we like the idea of people using whatever tools they want. We have tech called AudioLink, which allows people to use third-party middleware and audio at the same time. And also, like, the source is obviously available for people to check out, and people should be able to use what tools they want. Whenever we come up with tech, it's like, for example, an ambient system. We always say it's an example of an ambient system or an ambient system, not the ambient system. You don't have to use, you can pick and choose what things that we build for your own projects. And then another core thing is collaboration. So we consider collaboration at all levels, both internally to Epic, but also externally with the community. So internally, we believe audio is a core part of game development. So game design is including audio from the earliest stages of any kind of consideration for a project. A lot of cool stuff in Fortnite wouldn't have happened if audio wasn't a part of that conversation earlier in the process. The tools itself are freely available for anybody in any other discipline to check out. So a lot of the people, early adopters, really pushing the boundaries are actually tech artists who are jumping into Metasounds and finding it very comfortable and able to do things that are surprising to all of us in audio. So we deeply value collaboration. My team itself also jumps into communities. We help people out where we can voluntarily. So it's a big part of what we do, and we think of our features as a work in progress, and we open ourselves up to feedback and ideas from anybody and anywhere. So some of you may not be aware of UE Audio. A lot of you probably are aware, but I wanted to also kind of give you a really brief high-level overview of UE Audio, what it is. So whenever we come out with a new feature, like Metasounds, which is highlighted a lot in the sizzle reel, or Quartz, which allows you to do really accurate timing, like that game that was the shooter that had all the kind of musical timing on it, that was heavily using Quartz. Whenever we come out with some new tech, there's a tendency in the community to be like, oh, UE Audio is the Quartz engine, or everything's just now Metasounds. And really, all of these new pieces of tech live in an existing constellation of features in the audio engine. So we have lots of things. It's not just Metasounds. We've got spatialization, attenuation features. There's routing of audio, busing, parameter control. There's a really robust memory management system in there, so you don't even need to worry necessarily about where your memory's getting stored. We have this sort of turnkey solutions in a lot of these areas. There's a lot to go into, but this is not the scope to go into all those things, but rest assured that UE Audio is a lot of features, and it's not just Metasounds. So, however, Metasounds is the exciting thing. If you are new to UE Audio, we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what that is. So essentially, it's a high-performance audio editing environment that allows you to dynamically build DSP graphs without interacting with a programmer. What that means is procedural audio becomes a core part of your sound design experience as a sound designer, and also gameplay can very easily manipulate and control any aspect of your sound. It's constantly growing. We have a lot of interesting features that we're adding. So out of the box, it supports sample accurate timing and control, so triggers. If you don't know what that means, sample accurate means that the resolution of the event timing is at the level of a single audio sample. So 1 over 48,000 of a time resolution. And it supports also, your bread and butter, sample-based, like audio file-based sound design. It's essentially, in a nutshell, quite analogous to an audio shader. And we have more than 100 nodes already. These are sort of features that get added. Plugins can expand on them. The community is always adding more. We have a pretty robust API for you to build your own nodes if you're a coder. And we hope to see a growing community of people building and extending the capabilities of Metasounds. So we're always adding new Metasounds. In 5.2, we added a couple. We just wanted to highlight as an example that we're always adding. You always try to, when we do a new release, just check it out, see what kind of new things we're adding. So for example, somebody on the team really wanted to do a cool super oscillator. It's basically this like fat oscillator with lots of different controls to make a really thick sounding synthesizer. We debated what to call it, just call it super oscillator, I don't know. There was a lot of requests for low frequency noise, so we have like a Perlin noise generator, which you can use for all kinds of applications in audio. Some other low frequency noise controls, and we also have been improving our wavetable support. So wavetables are, you load up an audio file completely uncompressed in memory and can do some cool stuff with it. The wavetable itself allows you to do single period oscillations quickly and blend between them, so you could do some really interesting sounds. But coming up in the next release, maybe 5.3 actually, so it might have just been coming out, is better support for large audio files, so you can do things like granulate the audio file. So in this talk, we also wanted to highlight audio modulation. There's been a lot of work in this. It's an older plugin, but it's something that we found that the community doesn't quite understand. So we've got in progress, it should be coming out soon in a couple weeks, a completely robust documentation on audio modulation. But we've also added some features to make it easier to use. In a nutshell, audio modulation is essentially analogous to the patch cables that you might use in a modular system, modular synthesis system. This is my son, 5 years old, having fun randomly patching things together. The core idea is that you have modulation sources and modulation destinations. So modulation source would be literally anything. It could be blueprint, it could be an LFO, low frequency oscillator. It could be gameplay, and essentially it, excuse me, allows you to route our, control data arbitrarily around the audio system. So it's not within the scope of the talk to go into depth about it, but just rest assured, excuse me, it's a robust system. You can define your own parameters. It's not just volume control, it's literally any type of audio parameter. And we have support for reading from control buses and Metasounds, in which case, once you have that control bus data inside of Metasound, what it's actually doing can be anything. And these are just some screenshots of some of the tools and features that audio modulation has. So one of the big things that we added is more control and blueprints for creating dynamically modulation buses, applying them, and writing to them. Another thing in the vein of parameter control, this was a feature added to support that really cool fortnite modular synthesis thing that you saw on the sizzle reel. Essentially, in Metasounds now, the output pins of your Metasound can be something that you watch in Blueprint or code or anything to drive gameplay or visuals. And it's a very easy system. It's just an output pin, and you can write any data to it. It could be an envelope follower. It could be, who knows what you want to write out to it. And so there's some really cool stuff that people have done with that. This is an example of how you might grab that modulation data from blueprints. Essentially, it's as easy as saying, setting up a delegate when an output pin changes and then doing something relative to it. So here's an example of one of our tech artists that we've hired to do some cool work that demo some of this work that we're doing. And this is an example of one way that you might use output watching. So essentially, the keys on the piano are being driven by note choices in the Metasound graph. So you can just see sort of connections to gameplay. So here's an example of how that actually works. So in the Metasound graph, every note that is chosen randomly is put into an output pin. And then in the blueprint graph, you can actually set up the watch. Was kind of an interesting application of the tech. So this is another demo that was done by Tapes Club, or Patrick Hart. He was featured in the sizzle reel from another project. This is something he did after we were building the sizzle reel that fully utilizes this output pin watching to drive visuals. So all of the changes and visualizations are all being driven by Metasound rendering. And there's like a sort of rhyme or reason to the visualization off of the audio. Okay, so another thing that was driven and created by the team this last year for supporting the UEFN Patchwork system is this idea of building Metasounds at runtime. So in the video that you saw, there was some modular synthesizers built. Those are actually all dynamically constructing Metasounds. Essentially, it's a blueprint API that allows you to arbitrarily build Metasound graphs at runtime. Essentially, you can add input pins, output pins, connect patches together in any arbitrary configuration that you could want at runtime. We can also do it in the editor. So you can actually set up scripted actions to build Metasounds dynamically at editor time. And so we're actually already using this for robust automated testing, where we can sort of execute a script and generate like 150 Metasound variations that test all kinds of different configurations of Metasounds. It could be used for mass editing, all kinds of stuff. So it's like editor time scripting, dynamically building Metasounds. This is a huge feature. Hopefully you can kind of see the value of this, but we expect it to impact almost everything in our tech. Right now, the Metasound editor itself is not using the Builder API, but we plan on transitioning to that so that we can actually support building the Metasound while it's running and actually hear your changes without having to stop and recompile the Metasound. And many other things that we're finding even daily of like, oh, we could use the Builder API for that. So here's a demo. This is Chris Zuko, Mix Universe, that was in the sizzle reel. This is actually out now on Steam in early access if you want to check it out. He has a little video here demonstrating using the Builder API. He was actually the first person to use it, even before we used it. He like ported it back to 5.2 because we implemented it in 5.3. He ported the whole feature back to 5.2 and integrated it and then released it on Steam Early Access. I don't recommend that as a path for folks, but he is very clever because he immediately saw the value of how the Builder API could be used as an optimization. So his tech is essentially like a sandbox music creation tool. Prior to the Builder API, he would have one Metasound for all possible configurations. So it was like a mega sound. We call them mega sounds. So it was like all possible ways that you might play the sound. And he immediately refactored his stuff so that the thing that's actually built is only what the user is actually trying to build, and that's what this video kind of demonstrates. So this is the sort of edit mode. Without going into detail how his thing works, he can basically construct effects and changing the sound and all kinds of stuff. And under the hood, when a user does this, he's actually building a Metasound graph using the Builder API. Here he demonstrates the editor, where he looks at the world outline, and these are all the generated Metasounds. None of these were hand-authored. And so he made a little utility that allows you to actually grab that generated sound and export it to the content browser so you could actually inspect it in the Metasound editor, which he demonstrates right here. So here he's exporting it. he loads up the Metasound, and this is the graph that was actually created by the game. So he can validate that it's working as he expects, which is pretty ridiculous. So Chris Zuko made this on his own, but we intend to make this flow more turnkey for licensees. When when he did it, we internally the team were like, well, you should be able to do this, and he just did it. You know, we hadn't yet done it ourselves. Again, this guy's on the cutting edge of our tech. All right, so I'm going to switch gears, talk about Unreal Editor for Fortnite. So Unreal Editor for Fortnite is this crazy mode where it's like the Unreal Engine, but like to build Fortnite content in this sort of user-generated content world. It's where we're moving towards the metaverse. And the big idea on it is that people can create stuff and immediately leverage all of the networking, multiplayer, you know, all the kinds of things that you get in the Fortnite ecosystem, and reach a huge audience really quickly. So that's generally the idea of it. For audio, it has, the UEFN in general has some extra constraints that are more complicated than just regular Unreal Engine development. There's considerations on, you know, local client-side scripting. There's a lot of restrictions on that for security reasons. There's issues around complexity. The user base in UEFN is going to not be professional game developers, so this idea of building this really complicated thing to throw at them is probably not a good strategy. And and on top of that, when we expose a feature to UEFN, it's going to live for all of eternity. It's like backward compatibility becomes a really big question. And so we have to be really, really careful about what we roll out in UEFN. So in the current state of things, it's quite simple. If you're an expert in UE audio, and you move over to UEFN, you might be like, why can't I do X, Y, and Z? And it's because of those reasons I just outlined. But essentially, we've got the ability to play a sound. You can import your own audio, which sounds simple, but in the context of a metaverse, that has all kinds of implications on moderation, et cetera. You can control mixes. That's what this mixer device is. So a mix would be like relative volumes of sounds and things. We all are also like slowly rolling out aspects of sound attenuation and spatialization control, but it's not all of our features all at once. And there's some basic connections to gameplay. We've implemented verse components, et cetera. So ironically, so that's pretty basic. Then on the other extreme is this really crazy thing called Patchwork. The scope of this talk is not Patchwork, but I'll just talk a little bit about it. Check out Ryan's talk on Thursday, I think, where he'll go have a big deep dive on the system and how it works. But in a nutshell, these patchworks are actually Metasound graphs under the hood. And they're essentially using the Builder API to make these connections so that the user is building actual Metasounds at runtime as a gameplay mechanic. And so you can see right here on the left is this Metasound, and then on the right is what it would look like in Patchwork. One of the, just a couple of highlights of like why this is really cool. Obviously, you get access to the user base, which is awesome. So if you're a composer, you know about music, go jump into Patchwork, make some cool stuff, and it could be really popular. You reach a large number of people. But to me, the most exciting thing is that you and your friends can get together and jam in a multiple player environment, and it's really fun. Like 4 of you can go and start, you know, you do the bass, you do the keys, you do the drums, you know, and like before you know it, it feels like an actual, we call them synth jams, like me and my friends when we actually get our modular synth rigs together. It's like that, but way easier and a lot more fun. And of course, everything is updated in real time, so you can quickly experiment and find some cool stuff. And there's a lot of stuff too with this, like it's good with the output watching and everything like that. You can actually build really cool experiences that connect to gameplay systems. So there's a lot of potential and power for building really unique audio-driven experiences in the context of UEFN. At Epic, we're really excited about this. Please go and check out Ryan's full talk on it. So the general idea of UEFN at large is to kind of like slowly roll out, listen to the community, see what they want, and move from there. I already mentioned what exists now. There's a bunch of stuff in progress. We're improving basic workflows about, not just playing a single sound, doing all the kinds of things you might expect. Integrating stuff into sequencer, it's another big thing in UEFN. One of the big things also next is worldization, like adding reverb and some attenuation controls, which are missing right now. So essentially connecting stuff into more spatial orientation aspects. Also revealing or using some of our new audio profiling tools so that users can more easily figure out what's happening in their audio. Right now it's really difficult in UEFN because you don't have access to all of the dev tools that are available in the Unreal Engine. And of course, we want to roll out Metasounds in UEFN. We'll probably end up having read-only Metasounds. You can't make your own graph, but it'll probably be like presets and that kind of a thing. Probably supporting exporting the Patchwork devices into Metasound, et cetera. All right, so general progress. This is like going back to Unreal Engine, core dev, broad strokes, things that we're working on right now. What are we doing? What are we trying to push for? So one of the things that we feel strongly about is the UX, the UI, the widgets. What does it look like to be making sound in the Unreal Engine? And audio people love their widgets. Things just sound better when they look cool too. And one of the advantages that Unreal Engine has for audio is that it exists in the context of a world-class, graphics engine. And so it may not, be something widely known, but you can actually render materials directly into Slate, which is our C++ API for building interfaces. And so we hired a contractor to sort of experiment. This is the same person, Stefan, who worked on the piano thing and some other cool demos that we're doing. I was like, hey, Stefan, just iterate and experiment with building cool interfaces and widgets in the context of UMG and Slate. And so this hasn't been integrated yet in the engine. We haven't had time to go and actually refresh all of our interface, but it was cool enough to show you, to see where we're thinking and taking things in the light of being open about what we're trying to do. This is obviously not a priority over other things, but it's kind of a fun side thing that we're just experimenting with to see where we can go. So this is a little video demo that kind of shows some of the ideas that we're experimenting with. Envelope editing in the Unreal Engine is difficult and not great, so we want to have this. Sliders are really important. One of my favorite type of slider is one where you can drag across multiple sliders. You got to refresh your knobs. I'm a big fan of glowy things. So again, these are all shaders that are being driven by Slate. Got to make beautiful buttons. Animated toggle switches. These are just things that we're experimenting with. This is an interesting direction where doing a 2D slider is huge. You can control multiple parameters at once that are related to each other. Sounds like I'm feeding back. Anyways, there's a bunch of other stuff in this paradigm. We just wanted to throw a quick thing to show you sort of where we're thinking about stuff. Hopefully this kind of thing will roll out soon. The other big area that we're exploring is visualizations of audio. One of the features that a lot of people in our community asked for was I want to be able to hear the metasound at different stages of my graph. Kind of analogous, if you know anything about the material editor, you can kind of see the material getting built and kind of tells you, what you're doing as you're doing it. The problem with listening to arbitrary audio in the Metasound graph is that you might blow your ear off or ruin your speakers or whatever. It's actually not a really good thing to support, but the thing that they were probably getting at is just to understand the signal flow. And it turns out electrical engineers have solved this. They just add oscilloscopes and other techniques to analyze the signal. And so we've implemented an oscilloscope. You saw Some examples earlier in the sizzle reel, probably you could see the oscilloscopes running. The next thing is obviously a spectral feedback, but this is we took the oscilloscope in the editor one step further and added the ability to probe any audio signal in the graph. So you'll see right here, it's a low frequency oscillator, but you can see you hover over any of the output pins and you can actually see the signal, which is very useful for audio programmers to make sure things are working correctly. But it also helps you as a sound designer to like understand what the graph is doing at every given stage. So we're really excited about it. There's some extra stuff in that space that we want, which is like pinning to the graph, you know, like an oscilloscope view, adding oscilloscope views on non-audio data, so you could imagine seeing your control data visualized as well. And then, of course, adding the ability to look at the spectra, the frequency distribution of your sound. The other thing is we've been working on the audio profiler. We mentioned last year in Unreal Fest, this was a big focus of 2023. Turned out a lot of our priorities shifted very quickly to support Patchwork and other internal initiatives. So we actually weren't able to really go deep on the audio profiler. This was our previs that we worked with UX people on that we showed last year at Unreal Fest. But I wanted to show sort of a work in progress where it is now. It's already kind of cool. And there's a bunch of features that are coming in quickly in that space. And we hope to have some cool stuff by 5.4 that we can share with people. So here's a video kind of showing that. So it's basically a new tool. We call it an audio hub. And eventually we'll be kind of building all of our stuff in this hub. So this connects to mobile devices, to console, obviously to your local editor. And you'll be able to see all of the data coming in. You'll be able to pause the data. You can see right here that he's sort of pausing and unpausing the data. It has a log built in that's already tuned for audio-related logs, so you don't have to worry about like embedding it. It's just audio right there, all the things that are relevant to you. It has a little search window in the log, so you can filter it really quickly and easily right there. On the right side, you can see all of the data. Right now, it's kind of showing you one parameter for all of the sounds. It has a substring parsing, so you can filter out what's actually being displayed and only look at the stuff you care about based on naming conventions in your project. You can double-click the thing in the view and go directly to the asset. So you can be like, what's that sound? Where is that? And then you just immediately go and find it. These are all the parameters, and it's easily extendable. So if you're doing something unique, you can easily add to it. But these are the parameters that it can show you on the graph. You can sort by any of those parameters. So you can see like the loudest sounds or the ones that are whatever parameter, the ones with the highest filtered cutoff frequency. This is all built on Unreal Insights. So all of the underlying code is just basically Unreal Insights hooks. And it's a custom display of Unreal Insights for audio. So we'll be able to actually also show sound designer friendly understanding of CPU usage, memory usage, and that kind of a thing in the future. And so this isn't quite where we want to take it. You'll see in the bottom there, there's sort of a submixes thing. We're going to add the ability to visualize individual submixes. So this is the oscilloscope on the master submix. But you'll be able to see real-time analysis on any submix that you want to look at. One of the things, so this was a video that we made about 2 weeks ago. So it's like actively being made right now. And the developer that's working on this shared right before Unreal Fest an update on it, which I'll show here, which is live interfacing with the actual data that's being displayed. So you can mute it and solo it and potentially control the data and kind of zero in on what's happening in the scene. So this is just demoing the muting and soloing feature that they just added. So he's got 3 sine tones. And if you don't have it filtered, basically the thing that's being displayed, you can mute and solo it. So of course, once you start doing substring filtering, you can instantly mute and solo all the things that have been filtered. You can right-click and individually solo and mute individual sounds in the list that are being displayed. So this literally just came out like it's not even checked in yet. I was like, oh, let's put that in. Let's talk about it for Unreal Fest. So it really is a live. It's like a preview of the kind of stuff we're working on. I just wanted to say, like, we really are working on Audio Profiler. It's just hard to do everything. The team's small, and you can't do everything all at once, everywhere, all at once. So what are our priorities for 2024? So right now, Metasounds, the Metasound editor is great. There's a lot of discussion about what the preset flow works like. What's in there right now, if you don't know, a preset is essentially the ability to reuse a Metasound topology for other applications. It's analogous to like a material instance where you build your material graph and then you can instance off of it. So you don't have to make a unique graph for every sound. Like Fortnite, for example, has about maybe 15 to 20 Metasound topologies that we're using. But there might be thousands upon thousands of Metasound instances that are using presets. So the preset editor flow is terrible. We all hate it. So one of the big things to push for is actually focus on making the UX good. What does it look like to mass edit? A lot of the interface work that we're doing with the UX, UI kind of widgets, that'll probably be some kind of presentation mode. So when you load up your preset, you'll actually see a really cool skeuomorphic interface for the Metasound. There's a lot of work also thinking about inputs deeply. Like, is this input something that is intended to be overridden by the game? Is this an input that's intended to only be set by default in a preset? And kind of understanding that flow. What's in there now is really more or less a proof of concept of graph reuse. Certainly not our ultimate vision on that. Obviously continuing working on audio insights. So we have grand visions for what that's gonna look like. The basic architecture is implemented, as you can see, but there's a lot of stuff that we're gonna be pushing in that direction. A lot of our licensees have talked about this desire to have a really nice audio profiler, and so that's what this work is on. And we're shipping a bunch of projects with Metasounds right now, and so in the last couple months, a lot of work has been on optimization, profiling Metasounds, making sure that there's no bottlenecks, making sure that if the sound designer is doing something crazy, it's on them, not because of any fundamental issue with Metasounds itself. And building tools that allow them to understand what the performance impact will be on their Metasound. If you want to spend 20% of your CPU on one sound, that's up to you, but you should know that you're doing that. There's a bunch of new gameplay systems that we're rolling out the next year. There's some really cool stuff in this space. Can't really talk a lot about it now, but there's a lot of work that I think the community will be really excited about. Long-standing issues that interact with audio parameters and setting them and mass asset management problems. And of course, we're going to keep rolling out new DSP effects processing, more optimized DSP code. And we put TBD on here because I'm sure there's some crazy new priority will pop up in 2024 that we have no idea could predict. It might change everything by the next time we talk. So going back to connecting with the community, the team really values getting feedback from the community. We often jump into different places like Discord or Facebook, or I respond to stuff on Twitter as much as I can. We have a roadmap that we check. You can vote on different features on the roadmap. We try to make the roadmap less like blue sky speculative and more shorter term, so there's not a disconnect on like what is coming out. So typically the roadmap will be stuff that's already in progress or stuff that's already done but might come out in the next release. And there's a Discord for Fortnite Creative and UEFN. You should check out if you're interested in UEFN. The audio team actually just did an AMA on the forums for audio, so check that out if you want to get a deep dive on various audio issues in UEFN. We have EDC, the Epic Developer Community. I'm always encouraging people to write, tutorials. It's a good way to get your name out there if you're ambitious. You're like, I want to get noticed. Make a really cool EDC tutorial and then promote it. And if it's cool, then I'll go and promote it. It's a great way. We've learned a lot from the community from that, but also people that have done cool EDC stuff is like, oh, hey, like, do you want to put your stuff in a sizzle reel? That kind of a thing. And of course, we have the Unreal Source Discord. It's an unofficial community Discord. It used to be called Unreal Slackers. They recently changed their name. My team is often hanging out there. It's volunteer work, so please don't be upset if we're not always responding. It's like I try to go in a couple times a week and look to see what's happening. There's a lot of really helpful people in the community, which I'm very happy with. Whenever I see somebody answering a question for somebody else, it makes me really happy. So if you are a UE audio expert, go hang out there and help the community out. So I've mentioned this before. Please upload videos and let us know. We really do want to build an audio highlight reel every year that is part of the community. The community team at Epic is kind of more focused broadly on sharing games and all these kinds of things, but it's less focused on audio, although they do have some cool stuff with audio every once in a while that comes up. This is sort of like our, rogue attempt to engage with our audio community. And it's not really rogue, but it's just, trying to get audio stuff from the community in front of people's eyes. We have two conferences that we're participating in. Game SoundCon, Epic is actually sponsoring it. Please check it out. There are going to be 2 full days of UE audio talks. If you can't make it, obviously it's a high probability you can't. We'll have all of the talks posted online, so check out that when they come up. And then the Audio Developers Conference, we're giving a deep dive on the audio tech of Patchwork by our audio architect from Harmonix. So that's going to be cool, and that's in the UK. And there's a whole bunch of talks at Unreal Fest. Please check them out. I'm sure some of you guys know about this. We have Embark Studios here to give a cool talk. Music in the Metaverse. Never-ending procedural music with Metasounds. Let's see, and how to build an audio inspector using our extensible APIs. So it's pretty cool. Very proud to have 5 audio-related talks at the company, or at Unreal Fest. And that's it. Thank you, everybody.